Hey guys, LevelCap here. Today we're going to be reviewing the campaign of Destiny. Now this campaign can be played by yourself or with other people. Chances are you're going to actually just run into people randomly as you're running through the world, and you will have the option to team up with them. Now when I played the campaign, I played it from start to finish with Matimio and the Squirrels Nuts. We teamed up into a 3-player party and we went through every single mission together, and it was actually a lot of fun. It took us roughly between 12 and 13 hours to complete the campaign, and I have a feeling we did it a little bit faster since we were playing together. I think solo play might be a little bit more difficult because if you die in an instanced area by yourself, you have to start that area over, whereas if you have a few teammates to play with, if one of you dies, your teammate can revive them. You actually have to completely wipe your squad for that instance to start over. Now in the vanilla campaign, that means without DLC or any sort of added areas, so you can basically go to 3 planets and the moon. Right here we're on the moon. You've seen a bit of Earth in some of my beta coverage there, so I didn't want to show it off again, but the moon is absolutely gorgeous. You wouldn't think it because, you know, it's a big gray rock in the sky, but most of your gameplay on the moon is actually going to be underneath the surface in areas of it that's being mined or been destroyed in some ancient battle, and there are tons of really cool underground relics. And the level designers were great about giving you areas to just stand around and take in the scenery. I mean, check out this device here. I remember myself, Squirrel, and Matimio just standing here looking at this thing, our jaws agape. And as the story progresses, things get crazier and more fantastical. Sure, Earth kind of eases you into the whole alien aspect of the storyline. You get to the moon, things get crazier, and then you fly off to Venus, which has got this weird kind of city overgrown feeling to it with giant mountains that are radiating this blue glowing gas. There's an amazing combination of high-tech looking buildings or even ruins, I'm not sure what they are, great fantastical vistas, and then kind of old overgrown cities, and it seems like just about every corner you turn around you have to pause for a little bit and really just take in the scenery and adjust to the new environments that you're seeing. If Destiny gets any rewards, it should certainly get some for the art design, because I don't think I've seen a game with art quite this gorgeous. Now the aliens and AI add a huge element of strategy and fun to this game, and if you think for a second that this is a sci-fi game, think again. Check out the names on some of these baddies here. I'm fighting goblins, hobgoblins, minotaurs. There's just a whole bunch of fantastical type characters that you're fighting against, and frankly there isn't really a whole lot of science built into the storyline other than we're on planets that are in this solar system. Everything else seems to be just kind of crazy and not really too well explained. Try not to criticize the storyline too much because I had so much fun playing through the campaign, but I will say if you are looking for something that's more of a science fiction story, you're probably going to be a little bit let down because this is 100% fantasy. Maybe not so much in the traditional sense, but certainly the term science fantasy applies to this game more than science fiction. Each planet has a series of missions that you can play, and then generally there is a strike mission as one of the last ones you can play, and that usually has a giant boss. As you can see here, we are fighting Fogoth. The boss fights for the most part are really fun. Visually they are always very impressive. The boss chamber has had a lot of attention and detail applied to it, and the bosses themselves just look amazing. I won't say that the boss fights were all that engaging for the most part. Some of them were really hard, but there certainly wasn't a lot of depth to the strategy to fighting them. Then again, I haven't played through the campaign on some of the highest difficulties yet, and I have a feeling that things are going to get plenty challenging later on. Ironically, a lot of the mini bosses are just encounters before getting to the bosses were more challenging than the bosses themselves. Normal bad guys or heroic bad guys can make quick work of you, and it can be very, very challenging sometimes to get past certain checkpoints. Vehicles make a limited but fun appearance in the campaign, allowing you and your squad mates to hop on hover bikes or little hover tanks and make quick work of the enemies in front of you. Usually their use is pretty limited, and I'm okay with that because it is a lot of fun to actually just play your character and use all of their cool abilities. Leveling wise, the campaign really allows you to go through it almost uninhibited without needing to take a break or grind to achieve higher levels to hit higher missions. We did at one point have to take a small break, run some side missions, or do a little bit of PvP to gain an extra level or two to hit some of the future missions, but I found that afterwards if we had just taken up some bounties at the appropriate times, we probably could have gained those extra levels that we needed while playing some of the campaign missions. Then again, some of the bounty system in this game is a little bit confusing and not exactly set up that well, so you'll miss a lot of your bounties early on and then just kind of carry them with you throughout the game, and they'll take up a spot even though you're never going to complete them. One cool aspect about leveling up as you progress through the campaign, especially with your teammates, is that you all tend to get new abilities that really do affect the way that your party plays out. If somebody is playing a Titan and they're using the Defender Titan subclass, they can actually gain a really cool defensive shield, which comes in handy during boss fights or just really intense engagements. It's a huge element to the strategy and can really change up the way that everybody plays. One of the Warlock subclasses also boosts up the abilities of your teammates when he activates his super, and that can also really allow you guys to dish out massive damage at certain moments. So there can be a lot of metagame and small bits of strategy, and not just kind of running around bosses and shooting them in the weak spot. Party synergy and communication is certainly a big part of playing as a team. I tried some of the missions later on as just random squads, and it was very hard to beat the bosses or some of the waves of guys without good communication. When our party was communicating well, we would have guys taking out some of the random spawned in baddies and other guys distracting the bosses and basically reviving and just handling the enemies in good order. When you're not communicating, things get chaotic, people start dying, and you end up wiping much more frequently. So I highly recommend playing with some friends and having them on voice comm. Now, despite enjoying the campaign immensely, there were a few areas of it that could have certainly been done better. Peter Dinklage's voice acting is definitely a big key point. You have a ghost that follows you throughout the world and pretty much has lots of monologue and dialogue with you about what's going on, what you need to do, and frankly, his voice acting really didn't seem that inspiring. Comparing it to, say, Cortana, who plays relatively the same role in the Halo series, she's much more interesting of a character, has a bit more emotion in her voice, whereas Dinklage manages to seem uninterested in just about anything going on in the game. Even when he says that's interesting or that's inspiring, it doesn't sound like it based on his voice. It's almost sarcastic. I also wasn't a huge fan of the story. I thought it did a great job of sort of sucking you in and getting you interested in what's going on in the universe, and then not really explaining it too well. I won't get into the details too much, especially if you haven't played through the campaign yourself, but I will say if you're expecting a lot of good conclusive rationale for what's going on in the world, you're going to be pretty disappointed when you get to the end game. There's also a lot of alien races that seem to hate each other just as much as they hate you. There doesn't seem to be one specific type of enemy that you're fighting, which is kind of cool, but in a campaign this epic, you would think that you're really going to be fighting against the overbearing enemy force, and in this one it just seems like there's a lot of different warring factions, and all of a sudden you kind of find the darkness mixed in there, so it kind of takes away from just how powerful the overbearing enemy is supposed to be in this story. That being said, it was still a highly enjoyable experience. If you get some friends to play with, then the game is certainly worth the money just to play through the campaign. It's got player versus player built into it and a lot of endgame content as well, which I will be reviewing later. This is purely a review for the campaign part of the game. It's been a long time since I had this much fun playing through a story mode in any campaign, and I highly recommend it if that's the kind of thing you're looking for. As always guys, thanks for watching, and there'll be plenty of more Destiny content on this channel. I'll see you next time. This is LevelCap signing off.